generation.
Dates in the Bible don't quite match the marriage certificate. Uh-oh.
And hello, America, and welcome to America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. Well, it is great to have you aboard today. We're going to talk about crowdsourcing today. How do you do that with family history? Well, one group figured it out. WikiTree, and all their people around the world are helping each week on a WikiTree challenge for a different person. Melanie McComb from the New England Historic Genealogical Society is one of those people who recently benefited from these efforts. She's going to be on to talk about that and crowdsourcing in general, different ways we can do that. And then later in the show, Louise Janetti Roach, talk about crowdsourcing. She was doing it with people over in Italy, broke her line way back. Plus, one of her relatives over in Italy found something on eBay that tied directly to her family here in the United States. And you're going to want to hear exactly what went on. Great stories coming up later on in the show. Hey, sign up for our weekly Genie newsletter right now. You can do that, of course, on our Facebook page. You can do it on ExtremeGenes.com. And you can also sign up for our courses in beginning genealogy and DNA analysis. Right now, it's time to head out to Boston and talk to David Allen Lambert. He is the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and American Ancestors.org. Hello, David. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I think I've heard of your guest before. I think I may have run into her once or twice at work.
Yeah, she's what, 10 feet from you right now?
She is at the other end of the office, yes. We're going to start off Family Histoire News with a story of a person who just recently passed away. His name was Sam Anthony. He was 52 years old, and he died of cancer. But he was put up for adoption, Fish, when he was young and never knew his dad. 11 days before he died, he actually met his dad, who was a 78-year-old retired airline worker from Arizona. His dad had known the child was born and put up for adoption, but never knew what happened to him. Thank goodness for DNA, this reunion was able to happen. And like I say, just a mere 11 days before Sam passed away, he got to meet his actual dad. Yeah,
and his dad was actually driving back to his home in the West when the news came that his son had passed away. I mean, an amazing story.
You know, I'm amazed at the stuff people find in the beaches or divers finding coins and whatnot. But this story from Israel is amazing. So a person out there diving comes across something that's encrusted with all sorts of shells and whatnot and looks kind of like a cross and picks it up. And sure enough, it's a 900-year-old Crusader sword that somebody probably dropped off the boat, because this just happens to everybody all the time. The sword now is the property of Israel, and it will be protected and hopefully conserved. And we can figure out under all the sea crustaceans what this sword might look like. So stay tuned for updates on this and other breaking genealogical historically relevant news.
Yeah.
My next story really makes me want to go back and have French fries for lunch. Andrew Coletti, a food historian who dives into all sorts of stories of cuisine, like Victorian, 11th century Persian, 13th century Egyptian, has now tried his hand at 4th century Roman recipes from an old cookbook. And this is quite interesting. So they're actually making French fries and sauce. Now, the sauce itself is intriguing, but of course, North America is where French fries come from because of, well, potatoes. This is actually not made from potatoes, but from parsnips, because
really?
You want to run to McDonald's and get your parsnip fries. But the sauce, it's not our old-fashioned bottle of ketchup. It's made out of red wine and fish sauce. Oh, yum.
Wow.
Apparently it tastes pretty good.
So our Italian ancestors might have enjoyed these back in the day.
Exactly. It's hard to make French fries back then. Wouldn't it be gall fries?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Well, you probably heard of Columbus in 1492, right? I mean, every school kid probably has. And you've probably heard the story of the Vikings from a long time ago. That's part of their sagas of Eric the Red, etc. Well, there's actually documented proof of existence of North America 150 years before Columbus. This is a new study that comes out of the University of Milan, where they found a documented record that mentions west of Greenland in a work called Chronica Universalis, written by a Milanese friar back in 1345, before Columbus or his parents were even thought of. So it's amazing as we uncover history that may have just been there all the time, and it's archives in Milan.
If Queen Isabella had known about that, maybe she wouldn't have had to send Columbus over there to check it out.
Exactly. They could have just said the friar, and maybe he could have brought Roman French fries with him and brought them to the New World.
There you go.
Well, my next story is from England. This is an interesting story. So about 15 years ago, a couple bought a couple weather-worn sphinxes, like the Sphinx in Egypt, for their garden. They paid a few $100s for them, and they were going to sell them at an auction, and thought they would fetch between $400 and $600 or so. Well, it turns out they're not the regular garden variety, because they're real ancient Egyptian sphinxes, and they sold for, ready for this, $266,000 American, or 195,000 pounds.
Wow.
That's a lot for something you just had in your garden for 15 years in the elements that are pretty worn down. But, they've probably been out there for a long time, even before that, thousands of years.
What a
So you
great
just
find.
never know what you're going to find at a yard sale.
Right. Very nice.
Well, that's all I have from Beantown. But remember, if you're not a member of American Ancestors, for $20, you can use the coupon code EXTREME and become a member at AmericanAncestors.org. Well, we got some Ask Us Anything at the back end. I'll catch you soon.
All right, David, thank you so much. And coming up next, David's compadre, Melanie McComb, the Shamrock genealogist, to talk about the WikiTree Challenge, to talk about crowdsourcing. And then in about 20 minutes, it's kind of funny the way things work out sometimes as you line up your guests. We have this theme of crowdsourcing going on. We're going to talk to Louise Janetti Roach. She is from New Mexico. She's been into crowdsourcing also, all the way over in Italy, actually translating messages back and forth with people who have provided her with a plethora of information about her family. And over there, they made a breakthrough discovery on eBay that involved Louise's direct ancestors here in America. So you're going to want to hear all of this coming up when we return in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
Unknown parentage, lineage society membership, building your family tree, leaving a legacy. Regardless of your reasons for hiring a professional researcher, Legacy Tree Genealogists can help you discover your family's past. Their genealogists are highly rated in their field with specialties in DNA analysis, historical context, and forensic genealogy. For nearly 20 years, Legacy Tree Genealogists have created thousands of professionally bound and digital reports for families like yours around the world. So whether you've hit a brick wall in your research or are just getting started, Legacy Tree Genealogists can help you tell your story and preserve it for generations to come. To receive a free estimate for professional research, visit legacytree.com or call 1-800-818-1476. That's 1-800-818-1476. We'd be happy to talk to you. Legacy Tree Genealogists.
Hey Genies, it's Fisher here, and my shiny new ExtremeGenes.com website has been described as having that new car smell. I love hearing that. Having been with you for over 8 years now, it felt like time to help out listeners and followers who need to know the basics of genealogical research, as well as how to understand your DNA test results, and to be able to put them to work for you, breaking down brick walls, identifying birth parents, locating new cousins who may have photos and information that can't be found anywhere else, and verifying your paper trails. Yes, DNA can do all that, and I can show you how. Check out the all-new ExtremeGenes.com website and download the free Genealogy Strategy Roadmap and the free DNA Starter Guide. Then, if you like what you see, you can take those next steps to sign up for the video courses that you can watch at your leisure. I'll take you through all the basics, step by step. Find out more now at ExtremeGenes.com. Anytime is a great time to learn more about your family. Did you miss Roots Tech Connect this year? It's not too late to experience Roots Tech classes, keynotes, and how-to content. Just visit rootstech.org to see what you missed and to experience Roots Tech Connect on your own timetable. Select inspiring and insightful messages that will help you in your pursuit to connect with and share your family story in new ways. You can then use the free resources found at FamilySearch.org or the Family Search Family Tree app to have a deeper personal experience getting to know your family, past and present. Connecting with family and learning about your ancestors provides healing, peace, and a sense of belonging. And it's easy to share what you learn with others to help and inspire them as well. Visit rootstech.org for some inspiration or visit FamilySearch.org to continue on your journey of family discovery today. And we are back on the job at Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show at extremegenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. You know, crowdsourcing has been on our minds a lot lately. Myself and David Allen Lambert, and also my next guest, Melanie McComb, the Shamrock Genealogist over at NEHGS. And Melanie, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Fisher. Yeah, thanks for having me. Long time no talk, my friend.
It has been a bit. Well, you know, you've just been a guest on the WikiTree Challenge, as David and I have both been in the past. First of all, I just wanted to find out, how did it go for you? Did you make some nice breakthroughs with these great people crowdsourcing for you?
Oh, it was fabulous. They found actually quite a few things on both sides of my family. My father's ancestry is Irish, and they went to Prince Edward Island, Canada, and my mother's side is Eastern European Jewish. So there was definitely some brick walls busted, even on not direct lines as well. They actually had gone back on my grandmother's paternal line, the Corcorans, and they uncovered that, well, I had a little bit of an error with one of the records, and that revealed a whole nother spouse for one of my greats. So that was a nice find, though, because I was always kind of struggling finding the DNA matches, and now that makes a little more sense, maybe why I'm not finding it on that line.
Isn't that interesting how that works sometimes? You know, I think a lot of people think because we're all so into this that once in a while we're not going to have an error on there that maybe has extended back to our earliest days as genealogists, and we never found what was necessary to correct it.
Right. And in this case, it was the quality of the microfilm, which I think was misleading. Where, like, we thought we saw Corcoran in the film, and it was actually Conlon.
Oh.
And it was actually with the assistance of one of their Irish genealogists, because they have genealogists all over the world that help with these challenges. And he had actually manually gone through the right parish and uncovered a different spouse. I have a whole nother wife to go through. So it's definitely opened up more branches.
Any stories?
Oh, yes. The biggest story uncovered was they found my great-grandmother's brother. He had actually been an elusive one. He had come over to America from Romania a few years prior with one of his sisters. And they had settled in New Jersey, and then I just lost the trail altogether. So some of the Jewish genealogists actually had tackled the Siegel line to see if they could find him. And in the course of looking for him, not only did they find him, they found out that, well, he was a bit of a naughty boy. He got involved with a crime gang.
Oh, wow.
They actually had a scheme going on where they would open up these merchandise stores in different cities around the U.S., and they would have some goods shipped there, first with some good checks, and then later they would write bad checks. They would then ship to Brooklyn, close up the store overnight, and then just completely walk away from it.
That's quite a scandal.
Yes, and apparently they were found in a hotel in Chicago under different names, and they were wanted by police that were looking for them. He got a little bit of trouble, but it doesn't look like he was in prison very long. I think he might have given up the gang because he's back with his family in 1920.
That fills in a lot of blanks for you. That's great stuff. So thanks once again to the WikiTree people, the volunteers all over the world who do these challenges, take them on, because it really helps to illustrate the power of crowdsourcing in genealogy. And this is not something we could have done 15, 20 years ago, quite like we can today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm so thankful that just having the power of volunteers wanting to put their minds together, because that's how we really can crack open these brick walls, getting other pairs of eyes on a different question, looking at different types of resources, looking at different ways of answering the question. And yeah, along the way, you actually can chip away and actually bust open some of these brick walls.
Well, the reality is no matter how good a genealogist you are, you can't be aware of every possible source at which you can take a look. And some people, maybe even a beginner, might know of some source you're not aware of that can reveal exactly what you're looking for.
That's so true, especially when we think about all the different items we may have in our home archives. Think about all the family Bibles, the photographs,
Yes.
Even just the family lore, that you can't just put that in a book somewhere and expect to find that. You have to really reach out and try to get in touch with cousins or even potential cousins to try to identify if they have maybe just another piece of the puzzle that will help you look for the next clue.
You're really talking about two different versions of crowdsourcing. I think most people, when they hear crowdsourcing, it's all online. It's done through Facebook. It's done through a website maybe that people collectively share information on, which is all great and enormously powerful, as the WikiTree Challenge demonstrates. But crowdsourcing just among the people that you can track down within recent generations, among your first, second, and third cousins, can be enormously powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of luck even with just connecting with some of my Siegel cousins. We actually formed a private Facebook group where we just can connect and share stories and photographs and different things. And even if they're not actively doing genealogy, they know someone else in the family that is connected to what we're researching. So they're like, oh, well, that's so-and-so's kid, and they had these other children, or they're living over here. That helped me track down more and more. So now we're adding on to a group that originally started as just me and two of my cousins. And now I think we're up to like almost 10 people now.
That's fantastic. And everybody can kind of divide up responsibilities to search in different areas and see what they can come up with. We're talking about family Bibles here in the midst of all this, the family archive. To me, that is the hidden resource that's out there. I mean, with all the family Bible records that are online, there are many, many, many times that sitting in people's attics or in closets, things they never actually even look at, and so many people have never even bothered to scan or put online, yet alone to find on a place like Family Search or Ancestry.
Very true, which is why it's always important that, especially during a time like this, at home more, trying to go through and inventory the different things that you have within your family to make sure that it doesn't get lost in time. We don't want these treasures to go out with the estate sale or into the trash, without capturing what's in there first, because we never know when that piece of information could be crucial for your own line or maybe someone else researching that family.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Back several years ago, I found a lady who had a website devoted to one particular branch of this family that I was looking into. And she had listed among the data that she had collected information on this third great grandmother I was looking at. And I didn't know where it all came from. So I reached out to her and she said, it came from a family Bible. Oh, great. Well, where'd the family Bible come from? And she told me that somebody out there who was connected to the family was cleaning out a house where this great aunt had passed away, and all these folks were there ahead of her, and she went to the trash bin, and the family Bible was in the trash bin.
Oh, wow.
And she rescued it, and she digitized it, and she shared it with this person with the website, and as a result of that, I was able to break open this line. There is no other source for the information that was in that Bible. And it was absolutely invaluable. It went back to the late 1700s. So I was able now to plug her into her parents and carry those lines back like 5-6 more generations as a result of that. But I often picture that Bible sitting there in that trash bin, how close that came to being thrown out. Somebody was watching out for us,
Right. Yeah. Sometimes it's just that serendipity, because you're right. Record keeping, especially in the 1700s and earlier, was very spotty. Ministers on a circuit, for example, those records are just not consolidated in one place or may not even survive.
Sure.
So the fact you could find anybody just recording at least their own personal family information can be such a great lead. I'm so happy that helped you with your line.
Well, there was another story that came out of this that was interesting. Up that same branch of the family, I was looking for a marriage record on a couple of my ancestors. Could never find it where they lived in upstate New York, but went to newspapers.com and found that there was a Putnam County newspaper that in 1886 published the marriage records of this particular minister, a circuit minister, a preacher who had been up in that area. And they even made some references from the book about money he noted that he had gotten paid for providing the service, and then went through the whole list. The book no longer exists anywhere that I've been able to find, but it was all published in the newspaper 70 years after the marriages, and I found not only my direct ancestors, but their siblings and their marriage information as well. So it was hugely important. And, to a great extent, this is what crowdsourcing is, right? Trying to find those unexpected sources, or just putting your energy together, or your time and dedication and focus to try to solve a problem and answer that ancestral question.
And sometimes it doesn't even need to be a very hard question to answer or something that takes decades to learn. I had a recent crowdsourcing experience, I want to say a few months ago, when I was trying to determine where my great-grandmother, Tessie Freundlich, was buried. And we knew that interviewing family members that she was in a Jewish cemetery on Long Island, and we had a rough idea of when she died. So we had at least a decade or so to search. And it was just a matter of putting it out online. I used Twitter, actually, to just kind of put it out there. And unexpectedly, I actually had some people just pop in and give some examples of different places. I made a bunch of calls, and eventually it was just taking a clue that someone gave me about a particular row of cemeteries all lined up next to each other. I went through each of their sites, and they actually had their burial records in a database online. And what do you know? I put in her name and I found her.
Sweet.
She was there with her second husband, and she also was there with her son, my grandfather.
Great find. So kind of to review all this here, crowdsourcing can be as simple as reaching out to your distant cousins, can be as simple as setting up a Facebook page for a particular branch of your family, or setting up a website that you can kind of stake your flag in there and people find you, as my distant cousin with the Bible records did. I mean, it's a great way to go. You can do it in person, you can do it virtually, but reach out, find those people, and find what they've got.
Absolutely. It always helps to get a little help from your friends.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for coming on. It's great to talk to you again, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Take care, my friend. It's Melanie McComb from NEHGS. And coming up next, eBay does it again. We'll explain when we return in 5 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. Well, we just got done talking about crowdsourcing with Melanie McComb from NEHGS, and we've got another guest here who's been into that recently, and it led into a whole new thing involving eBay. And let's get started talking to Louise Janetti Roach. She's from New Mexico. And Louise, welcome to Extreme Genes. It's great to have you.
Hi, Scott. I'm really thrilled.
So tell me about this crowdsourcing. You have this wonderful Italian heritage, and you got going with people overseas, and it really has paid off.
Right. Well, my family goes back for centuries in the same little village in the very northern part of Italy in the Alps. So I have a long family history, and I started connecting with them around 2011 and making friends over there. I made a visit first and met a few people and met some of my cousins. Then I joined a Facebook group for people who have their roots from the village. So the village only has about 650 people in it.
What's the village?
It's named Castelfondo,
okay,
or Castelfondo, and it's in the Val di Non, which is a valley that runs through Trentino.
Sounds
the
beautiful.
Province of Trentino. Oh, it is. It's one of the most gorgeous places I've ever been. And it goes right up into the mountains, and you can hike through it. It's absolutely breathtaking.
How far back does your line go now as a result of all your crowdsourcing with these people?
Well, my tree goes back to the 1400s, and that's been documented through all the centuries. There is documentation that goes back 200 years prior to that. The family line actually started in 1265. and it's documented in something called the Codex Cles, which is a public document for the laws and the rules of the land. It is in documents in Innsbruck.
So you've got the documentation and all this line provided to you through the Italian government. Is that it? Or did you get this through the family?
No, through the family. My family never lost touch with their family lines and their heritage. My great-grandfather originally came to America in 1877. And he eventually got married, sent for his bride from Castelfondo. She came over, they got married. They had one child who was my grandfather. And then they went back. They went back and had a whole slew of other kids. And my great-grandfather became the mayor of the village, and he was well known over there. And our ancestral home from the 1500s is still there.
Incredible.
And then around 1902, 1903, around there, he brought the whole family back. So by 1906, my entire family was here.
What I'm amazed at is you were telling me off air before we started here that they had a goat skin there in the village. Tell this story.
That's what I've been told. I've been told that the family tree was actually kept on a goat skin that hung in the family ancestral home. And I'm supposing that that was probably like a parchment, some type of a parchment or tan skin. Every time a generation was born, they kept adding to it. Along the way, they transferred this to paper, and then eventually one of my cousins over there commissioned an artist, and the artist then created an artwork. It stops at my grandfather's generation, but then it goes back all the way to, I believe it's my 18th great-grandfather. And it has all the branches. I have it hanging right now in front of me. I can actually go to each one, and I see all the dates of my male ancestors on this tree and their wives.
And then you did a Y-DNA test on one of your male relatives, and that proves this line is accurate.
Yes. My brother took the Y test. We waited a few years before we had any matches, and then we had one match, and it was someone that I recognized who lives in Illinois, so my branch is from Pennsylvania. And this gentleman, we had the same surname, and I was able to trace back immediately, looking at our tree, that our common male ancestor was born in 1650.
Wow, that is an amazing story. And it gets better, too, because here you are in touch with these people over there. You have, is it a Genie Facebook group? Is that correct?
No. It's actually, I'm related to everybody in the village. Just about everybody there is some kind of a distant cousin of mine.
Sure.
The Facebook group that I'm connected with, it's Che di Castelfondo. It's based on anyone who either was born in Castelfondo or has roots from Castelfondo.
What's so cool is they made a discovery on eBay that somehow, as diligent as you are, you missed.
I have alerts set up. I never saw it, and I don't know how I didn't see it, but it may not have been an alert that I had, because I don't believe it was under Genie. And this was a whole group of photographs and postcards and cabinet cards that had been kept by someone in the village from the late 1800s. They went online about 2015, 2016, maybe. I had become friends with a lot of people in the group because we had a lot of common connections.
Sure.
And I have third and fourth cousins over there. And so one day I got a private message from Giovanni. And he said, you need to look at this collection I just put online. He said, I think some of these people belong to you. And of course, he speaks Italian in the local dialect, and I speak English. I only speak a smattering of Italian. So we translate. We have to go through Google Translator.
Well, sure. That's the way it works sometimes. I do that with people over in Sweden.
Yeah, and it works great. So I got on, and he says, you have to look at this card. So I looked at it. It was a cabinet card, and I knew immediately it was my grandfather. I recognized him right away. He was a young man of 21, and he was pictured with his first cousin, who is also related to me several times. So they were both from the village, and they were sending a Christmas note back to their aunt.
Wow.
I believe it was dated 1908, if I'm not mistaken.
Incredible.
So, yeah. And so then he said, look at some of the other ones. So I found about 4 or 5, I believe. But the most amazing one was a cabinet card of my second great-grandfather. And it was dated 1871 on the back. I had no idea. I had only been able to find photographs going back to my great-grandparents. And on the back of this cabinet card, in dialect, it actually says Uncle Leone, Padre Damiano. So it means Uncle Leon, father of Damiano. And Damiano is my great-grandfather. So, so this was my great-grandfather's father. That was like a huge...
a big
discovery. Yes.
So did you get any of the originals, or are they still over in Italy?
No, I liked it that he had them, because Giovanni is a big historian, and he worked with another person who's from his family. He had spent years putting together this huge anthology of family memories, going back to as far back as when photographs started being taken.
So it's in the right hands then.
Oh, yeah. And I know Giovanni shared these photographs with Dino, and then Dino had them all scanned and put into this gorgeous book. And so I'd rather that Giovanni kept them.
Sure. Yeah, no, it makes sense. But I think it's very impressive that you've got the search terms on eBay so that you can get those emails when something comes up. Have you ever found anything there yourself?
Oh, yeah. A lot of my uncles and great uncles, they had businesses in Pennsylvania. And so I found a lot of things from their businesses, promotional material like postcards and matchbook covers. And every once in a while, I'll find something that actually was in their businesses, like a mug that might have been etched with their name or something like that. Yeah. And then I have a couple of distant cousins, and they're artists. And occasionally their work comes up too. So almost every day, one of my search terms will show up in eBay for somebody.
For something. Isn't that amazing? I just think it's still one of the most overlooked resources for family history. Well, it's been great talking to you, Louise. She's Louise Giannetti Roach. She's in New Mexico. What a great story. Congratulations on all your success through crowdsourcing and on eBay. Amazing.
Thank you.
Take care. And David Allen Lambert is coming up next as we do another round of Ask Us Anything on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, in 3 minutes. Genie's Ancestry.com has just released an important new database, and it's free. It's the Freedmen's Bureau Bank Records and the Freedmen's Bureau Marriage Records. These records are a game changer for African American research. For the first time, searches for ancestors among these records can be done solely within these two databases, making discovery easier than ever before. Every name in these mostly post-Civil War records has been indexed. We're talking 3.5 million names, and they often include the names of parents, siblings, children, former slaveholders. They commonly provide ages, marriage information, and so much more. In some cases, you can read in their own words some of their stories as well as their post-emancipation ambitions and challenges. If you've been hesitant to seek out your African American ancestors because of the pre-1870 research challenges, now is the time to see what information is waiting for you right now for free. Only at Ancestry.com. Hey Genies, it's Fisher here, and my shiny new ExtremeGenes.com website has been described as having that new car smell. I love hearing that. Having been with you for over 8 years now, it felt like time to help out listeners and followers who need to know the basics of genealogical research, as well as how to understand your DNA test results, and to be able to put them to work for you, breaking down brick walls, identifying birth parents, locating new cousins who may have photos and information that can't be found anywhere else, and verifying your paper trails. Yes, DNA can do all that, and I can show you how. Check out the all-new ExtremeGenes.com website and download the free Genealogy Strategy Roadmap and the free DNA Starter Guide. Then, if you like what you see, you can take those next steps to sign up for the video courses that you can watch at your leisure. I'll take you through all the basics, step by step. Find out more now at ExtremeGenes.com.
Unknown parentage, lineage society membership, building your family tree, leaving a legacy. Regardless of your reasons for hiring a professional researcher, Legacy Tree Genealogists can help you discover your family's past. Their genealogists are highly rated in their field with specialties in DNA analysis, historical context, and forensic genealogy. For nearly 20 years, Legacy Tree Genealogists have created thousands of professionally bound and digital reports for families like yours around the world. So whether you've hit a brick wall in your research or are just getting started, Legacy Legacy Tree Genealogist can help you tell your story and preserve it for generations to come. To receive a free estimate for professional research, visit legacytree.com or call 1-800-818-1476. That's 1-800-818-1476. We'd be happy to talk to you. Legacy Tree Genealogist.
All right, it is time once again for Ask Us Anything on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and ExtremeGenes.com. David is back. And David, before we get to our first question, I got this great email with a follow-up from last week. It's from Brad Myers in Hornell, New York. And he says, just listen to your Ask Us Anything segment from the lady looking for her ancestor's circus career. I think it might be fruitful if she could find some early copies of Billboard magazine. Yeah, really? Billboard, known for their famous top 10 music lists, they started out as a trade magazine for the circus industry. I had no idea. And he says maybe it'd be worth a call to Billboard or a call to the Circus Museum at Baraboo, Wisconsin. So there's a little crowdsourcing right there. So thank you very much for that, Brad.
Well, that's great. You know, our listeners are a great resource as well. And anytime you hear anything that we mention, if you want to add something to it, let us know. Thank you, Brad. That was great.
Yeah, very helpful. Who knew? All right, so our first question today is from Wayne Connor in Seattle, Washington. And he says, guys, David in particular, he's pointing at you, David. He said, my first great-grandfather's diary tells me he sought medical treatment at Mass General Hospital. How far back do medical records go, and could they be accessible? I also had a great uncle in an asylum after World War I. Anything there? Thanks, Wayne.
Well, I want to admit that you sent this to me earlier because I had to do a little homework on this one because I didn't know it off the top of my head. Hospital records in Massachusetts or anywhere in the country can be sort of tricky because you don't know what their retention schedule is. So that means that they could get rid of the records later. My own birth record that's recorded in the hospital actually doesn't exist anymore.
Really?
I ordered it over 30 years ago, and they have no record that I was born there other than the copy in the town. Yep, they purged all their old records years ago. Now, that being said, sometimes, Fish, records show up in the darndest of places. In a dumpster in the 1970s, somebody found an 1867 and 1870 Boston City Hospital register because apparently they threw out all the old records, and those were just the 2 books they forgot to throw away. We have them online. So doing my homework on the Mass General Hospital, which is the oldest hospital around in Boston, and that basically dates back to the time when ether was used for the first time. And their medical and surgical records of those involved date from 1821 and go to 1903, over 950 volumes. Now,
wow.
That's pretty amazing because you got to figure that's 200 years ago when the hospital starts.
Right.
And I think it's a tremendous genealogical value. And their archivist and curator named Jeff Mifflin has basically said that if you send him an email, and we can provide this to our listeners, you can get a copy of the records. So if you have a date from that diary, that will help out a great deal. Now, on the second part of the question, obviously PTSD and World War I came arm in arm, and there may have been somebody in an asylum. That could have been a private asylum. It could be a state asylum, or it could even be the early makings of a VA hospital visit.
Sure.
Now, VA hospital cards are on FamilySearch.org, which is great because you can scan them and look at them for free. They're alphabetical from A to Z, and they cover a lot of World War I and World War II veterans, etc. The private asylums, if they're still around, where the records are, might be a bit of a bear to find. But if it's a state, at least in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, because of HIPAA, you really don't stand a very good chance of getting those records because of privacy. If you're having to research somebody that's in mental health records, you have to go to a court judge in Massachusetts and assign yourself as a temporary executor of your deceased relative's estate. And then from there, go to the Department of Public Health and keep your fingers crossed. And maybe, just maybe, as long as I always say you don't mention genealogy and you say family health, good chance you may see the file. And some of the mental health records go back equally as long, like the 1830s, for some of the Massachusetts state asylums.
All right, thanks for the question, Wayne. And we've got another one coming up when we return on Ask Us Anything in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. All right, time we got about question number 2 this week on Extreme Genes with Ask Us Anything with David Allen Lambert from the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. And David, question number 2 today is from Tina Richland in Aurora, Illinois. And she says, guys, I'd like to know if you have any advice on how to research my house. It dates back to the 1800s, and I'd love to know the history of it. Thanks, Tina.
Well, Tina, genealogical work and house history kind of go arm in arm.
Very much so.
Obviously, we're looking at the same set of records. The census is going to be the first place because the 1940 and the 1930 and even the 1920 census are probably going to give the house number unless it's really on a rural road. Rural mail delivery happens right before World War I in most communities. And before that, it would just say your house is on Main Street. And then it would be a little difficult to figure it out. But by the 1920 census, you may find a house number. The other thing is that, of course, you have your deed. Your deed gives a chain of title. It goes back from your purchase, from who you purchased it from, and then it should say on that deed, that conveyance, that they purchased this property at this date from this party. And then you just look at that volume and page and go back to the next one. I mean, deed records are pretty centralized, and Family Search has a lot of the older ones for different parts of the country. So you may have to go to your local registry of deeds in your county and research this. It shouldn't be too difficult. There's other things we can use to kind of research who lived there. I mean, you may have poll tax records. You may have voter lists. You would have city directories or town directories. I mean, I started when I was a kid, Fish, researching my house, which is also late 19th century, because I was digging old medicine bottles in the backyard. I wanted to figure out who put them there. So I went to our local historical society and I went through what are called our poll tax books. And they went street by street and said who the head of household was. And then after 1920, when ladies got the right to vote, the wife's name is listed as well. Usually gives their age, their occupation, and if they resided someplace in the previous year. And that's helpful because in a lot of cases, the resident doesn't necessarily mean the person who owns it, but just happens to be the one living there. So you might find a boarder or a renter. You've probably done some of this with some of your family houses. What have you used?
Well, I haven't done a whole lot with that. I've really wanted for some time to go back and research the property I grew up on in the backwoods of Connecticut. My question to you, Dave, kind of in a similar vein here is, I'm not sure that the street that we were on was there that many decades before I was born, but somebody had to own the property.
That's
so
right.
Would the deed then follow the property back, and who would we contact for something like that?
So it would be the registry. So you may find that, say, if your house is in a subdivision that was built in, say, the 1940s or 50s, it probably has a larger reference to deed. So it might say, say 50 acres of land. It was part of this big parcel that was probably associated with a real estate development plan that shows the different house lots. So plans that go along with deeds are helpful because it might show how it was squared out of a particular lot.
Sure.
Then you research the land. My house built in 1897, Fish. I've traced the property back to 1733 when there was no house there. And it went from being a farm field to an adjoining farm that was built in the 1850s. Mine was sold off as a lot in 1897. And I traced before his house, the property belonged to the farm across the street that was built in 1845. That was part of a farm that was there in the 1730s before that. And it was a larger piece of property of about 150 acres versus my 2 acres that I have now.
Unbelievable. So, David, thank you so much. And thank you for the question, Tina. And, of course, if you have a question for Ask Us Anything, you can always email us at askusanything@extremegenes.com. David, talk to you next week.
Talk to you soon, my friend. Take care.
All right. And that's our show for this week. Thanks so much for joining us. If you missed any of it, you want to hear it again, it's easy to do. Just go to Apple Media, iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, or extremegenes.com and catch the podcast. Talk to you next week. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.